I promise I'm going to bore you at least once during this video. In my intro, I say that I'm a geologist and marine biogeochemist, and somebody said, can you please talk a little bit more about that? Okay, I will. When I was a little kid, I had a subscription to a magazine that talked about science and technology, and mankind, was diving into the oceans, and I thought that maybe becoming an oceanographer would be a really cool thing, or maybe exploring the Arctic or the Antarctic. Fast forward a decade or so, I don't know. I find a rock in our garden that has an imprint of a shell. I thought that was quite cool. I also had something that I jokingly called my prehistoric tool, and it took me a long time to realize that that prehistoric tool probably actually was a prehistoric tool, because I used it. I used it to hammer nails in. I used to love building huts. And the discovery of that rock in our garden, the little piece of stone, that introduced me to one of my father's colleagues who collected crystals and so on, rocks, from places like Idar Oberstein in Germany, and we went on holidays there several times. So I got into collecting quartz crystals, stuff like that, amethysts, really beautiful stuff. My dad, of course, threw away my entire rock collection at some point, because that's how my dad ticked. I felt he should have at least have tried to sell the stuff, because that would have been smarter. So fast forward another decade or so, I'm a student of geology, earth science in Amsterdam, and I carry out fieldwork in places like Spain and Germany and Sweden. And I could talk about funny experiences that I've had on my fieldworks, and I could talk about animal encounters that I've had on my fieldworks, but this time I'm going to talk about the actual science. I told you I was going to bore you to death. At least once. I am in an area in Sweden that was investigated in the 1960s, but no one has been there, not from my university, since, and I was told it was a folded area, so an area with lots of geological layers having been folded by forces in the earth. But when you have that, you're supposed to have sinistral and dextral movements. I told you I was going to bore you. When you have folds, layers move past one another, and that creates shear, a direction of movement. And the direction of movement is either to the left, which is called sinistral, or to the right, which is called dextral. I made a drawing of it. See? You have to take my word for it. If you don't see what I mean, I'm not going to explain it, because I'm not a geology teacher right now. And what I found in the field was that the movements were all in one direction. They were all sinistral or all dextral. I don't remember what exactly it was, but it told me that I wasn't in a folded area. And I also found something called mylonites, which means that you're basically in a shear zone. And yes, I wasn't in a folded area, I was in what turned out to be part of a major shear zone that runs from Sweden all the way to the top of Norway. Have I bored you enough now? Okay, that was my field work in Sweden. How did I end up in marine biogeochemistry? That's an interesting story as well. I'm taking classes and I'm not feeling well, because taking classes is what you do. And I'm not feeling well. I don't know, I had the flu, or maybe my period had started, whatever. I wasn't feeling well that morning and I skipped classes, but by sort of midday I was feeling a lot better, and I decided to go over to the university after all. And in the afternoon we were having some guest lectures from NEOS, I think they were. Jan. And after the class, one of them asked us whether we were interested in a tour of the labs. He was working in a clean lab on the ground floor, which used to be part of a different institution, and we didn't have access to that normally. And another person and I went along off the top of my head, and at the end of that tour of the labs, this guy says, we are actually looking for someone who can take over my research once I finished my PhD. Something along those lines. And I thought, hey, I may be interested in that. And I don't know what I said. Anyway, this is how I ended up in marine biogeochemistry. I started working with rare earth elements. Yes, the stuff that's in your mobile phones, etc., the stuff that you hear about China. These elements are not rare, but they are difficult. They are difficult to separate from their, let's call it, environment. And there's another complication. These elements, they're called lanthanides. They behave similarly as actinides. And that's also something that you need to take into account. So you have to really separate them very well in order to be able to use them. That has something to do with why they're so expensive. And was there anything else I was going to say? That's how I ended up in the States and all sorts of other places. I think there was other stuff that I was going to say, but never mind. Yeah, I was going to talk about. I can do that, actually. No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, maybe I will. When I went to Sweden, I bought a car, and that car had some complications. That's a story for a different video, maybe. But one thing I did was park it into a deep ditch twice. Not once, but twice. I had just arrived there and it was Sunday. I had found a camp spot, a campsite, and to get me started, that was good, of course, because you need a base to find a place. That's what you do when you go on field work. You have to find a place where you can stay. And on that Sunday morning, I decided to go for a drive, explore the environment a little bit, and I decided to park in a nice grassy patch by the side of the road, not realizing that it was actually a deep, overgrown ditch. So here I am with my car stuck in a deep ditch, and it's a Sunday morning, and all I could do is wait for people to pass on that road, perhaps. Thankfully, an hour later or so, somebody did pass, and Swedes, being in the situation that their country is not very densely populated, I guess they all have the tools in their cars, and somebody towed me out of the ditch. And weeks later, I am on a similar road somewhere else, and I see a car coming towards me, and I stupidly go to the side to make space so that he can pass, and I go into the ditch. But thankfully, of course, there was a car and this guy towed me out. Yeah, what can I say? I'm human, I make mistakes, I sometimes do really stupid things. I couldn't stop laughing, and my friend in Amsterdam, who I told about this in a letter, she couldn't stop laughing either. Now,